So we're back with standard number 13. We're still on industrialization and the progressive era. This is the last standard of the industrial era in the progressive era. And we're going to get right into standard 13. So standard 13, we're going to evaluate the efforts to reform America's society and politics in the progressive era. So these are the key terms you need to know about the progressive era. And we're going to look at the following images and see what it tells us about the progressive era. So as you see right here, these guys all packed in one room. Does this look like great conditions? No. Right? This is immigrant living inside of urban society. So as you see right here, this situation doesn't look great for kids playing outside. And right here, this is definitely not a great situation, right? However, these scenes seem to be staged, and they were staged. They were staged by a guy called Jacob Riis. And Jacob Riis was a progressive, but also was considered a muckraker. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So, what is a progressive? A progressive is somebody who's trying to make political change and societal change, and make it through politics, right? They're aiming to send a message to political leaders so that those political leaders will in turn make a change in society to better society. That's why they're considered the progressives. So a muckraker, I told you Jacob Riis was a muckraker. A muckraker is a journalist, a writer, somebody who's writing and exposing corruption in society, bad labor practices, slum conditions, and other social or political issues that's happening in society. So Jacob Riis is going to try to expose horrible conditions that immigrants lived under in urban areas. And he does this by writing a book called How the Other Half Lives. Many Americans never saw how these poor immigrants lived. And Jacob Riis wanted to show in his book how the other half lives. So Jacob Riis' efforts is going to help laws to be passed to improve urban tenements. Another muckraker is Upton Sinclair. Upton Sinclair writes a book called The Jungle. The Jungle initially was intended to show the lives of immigrants living inside of cities. However, those immigrants was working in the meatpacking industry, and Upton Sinclair wrote about how terrible that meatpacking industry was that they were working in, and people read it and realized that the meat is bad, and that they're treating the meat very, very bad, and that people should not have to eat that type of meat. And that's gonna, when politicians read this, especially Theodore Roosevelt, president at the time, that's gonna lead to the Pure Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act to try to clean up the meat packing industry. So this is a writing about Jane Addams and her Hull House. The Hull House was a settlement home to try to help immigrants, immigrants get trained to get jobs in society, teach them English and all the other good stuff, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And this is another muckraker. Her name is Ida Tarbell. And Ida Tarbell is going to aim to destroy the Standard Oil Company, get rid of monopolies like Rockefeller, Standard Oil Company. Rockefeller runs their dad out of business. And Jane Addams is thinking, if this is the last thing I do, I'm going to get this guy who ran my dad out of business. So she writes a book about how unfair Rockefeller's practices are, which is going to help convict Rockefeller for violating the Sherman Antitrust Act, and force the company to break up into 32 baby companies. So Jane Addams, the Hull House that we talked about a little bit earlier, the Hull House is going to provide social service for immigrants. It's going to give them child care. It's going to help them with medical care. It's going to help them learn the English language, learn their legal rights. And Jane Addams tries to help these immigrants. She also created a cleanup system in Chicago. Jane Addams was a progressive, not a muckraker. She's not writing things, but she is trying to improve society for the better. So she's considered to be a progressive. So this progressive era is all about getting better, but for some people it just didn't get better. And those people were the colored people. Colored people face heavy discrimination through Jim Crow laws, which Jim Crow laws were laws that separated or segregated black and white people. You also see mass lynchings, especially in the Southeast, where African Americans are getting lynched more than ever. And those Jim Crow laws were upheld by the court case Plessy versus Ferguson, which declared separate but equal to be constitutional. Make sure you remember that. Plessy versus Ferguson is going to allow separate but equal. So to combat that, you have the creation of the NAACP. And the NAACP comes out of this Niagara movement started by W.E.B. Du Bois. And the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, is going to be started by both white and African Americans lawyers that's going to try to improve the rights of colored people through the judicial system. All right. Pause the video and answer those review questions. And we're going to move on into the progressive political reforms. So as you see right here, here's a ballot. On the right, there's a law that needs to be voted on. But how do we get that law? You get that law through the initiative. The initiative is where people are able to initiate a law or start a law. They're going to get a petition signed, a certain number of voters sign a petition, and force a vote on a law. So people wanted the power to be able to make laws where lawmakers did not make those laws. The referendum is the voting on those laws. So once you force the vote on that law, the referendum is the process of actually voting on that law. And then the people wanted the power to remove corrupt political officials. So you have the recall. The recall is going to allow the people to remove a public official before their term is up. And then the 17th Amendment allow for the direct election of senators. People are able to directly elect senators instead of senators being chosen by the state legislators. And as you see here, there's child labor, which was not good. Many children were used and worked long hours. They didn't get to go to school. They lost arms and legs because the work environment was very, very dangerous. And the progressives are going to aim to stop that. Not only going to try to stop child labor, they're also going to push for minimum wage. They're going to push for a minimum age law. They're going to try to help get people shorter work days, higher wages, and safer working environments. So that people wouldn't be so worried about actually dying on the job from day to day. So Theodore Roosevelt is going to push to save natural resources and land and society as they see America industrializing very, very rapidly. And he is going to try to set aside this land and resources and create out of them national parks. And this movement is going to be called the conservation movement. So the conservation movement is going to be with Theodore Roosevelt try to set aside millions of acres of wildlife and land to create national parks like Yellowstone Park, Yosemite Park, and the Grand Canyon. So these are some of the things that was done during the Progressive Era. And please try to stop the video and answer these review questions. So that's the end of standard number 13. We're going to see you back for standard number 14. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't, tell your friends, tell anybody in the state of Georgia. This is going to help them ace the end of course test, ace any test that's based on the Georgia standards. You guys be good and have an awesome day.